The Coming of the Strange Ones, a summary. Lumbedu was a guest at a feast made in his honor by one of his patients whom he had healed from a fever. At the feast, Lumbedu ate so much that in the evening he had a nightmare of being chased, strangled, and even torn apart by about 10 monstrous demons. At the feast, Lumbedu had even eaten the larger half of a goat, a great bowl of boiled intestines, a pile of corn cakes, and had drunk 2 clay pots full of bubbling corn beer. He had indeed slept with a heavily filled up belly. Mulumbi, his son, was one day seen running and panting through the forest as if he was being chased by evil demons. He was so frightened that he had gained the strength of 1,000 men and the endurance of a wild buffalo. He was heavily frightened and was running with all his might, and even though wounded and bleeding, Mulumbi ran like his life depended on it. He ran till he reached his father, Lumbedu's kraal. He called out to his father and soon also drew the attention of his father's 4 wives, Ojoyo the first, Tuwandi the second, Vunakwe the third wife, and Lulinda the youngest wife. Ojoyo embraced Mulumbi his son, and he collapsed in her arms, and she carried him to her hut, gave him some sleep-causing Luika water, and let him sleep. Then Ojoyo and Vunakwe debated on what may have caused Mulumbi such fright, with Ojoyo insisting that only something that frightens brave warriors could have frightened her son. The following day, Mulumbi prepared to tell Lumbedu what he had seen, and his request was that Lumbedu please believe him. Impatiently, Lumbedu ordered the boy to speak up and then get out. Malumbi shared that he had gone with boys from Songozo's village to hunt and were led deeper into the forest, till arriving at the Zambezi River, wherein they caught a buck, roasted, and began eating it. When suddenly Mbimba, a boy from the village, stood up and gave a great shout of fear. Looking closer, they'd seen a big canoe which looked like a water serpent, and along its sides were long paddles, and in its center a pole on which was stretched a skin hung by many ropes. On its front were attached great knives and was a carving shaped like a man with hair like a lion's mane. This canoe came closer and closer and stopped at the river bank. Strange-looking men got out lowered on ropes down the sides of the canoe. These men had pink skin and had long hair like a lion's mane, some with black shiny hair, some red, and one had hair the color of corn. The strange men began swimming naked and were enjoying the waters. A group of them came to a frightened Mulumbi, and after one of them touched and grabbed him to his feet, Mulumbi saw that these strange men had green eyes. Such recall gave Mulumbi more trauma, such that he began sweating. Lulinda and Tawundi, Lumbedu's other wives, encouraged Mulumbi to share the story and then go and rest as he wasn't looking well. Mulumbi then shared that some of the strange ones had blue eyes and others brown, but that the one who held him had green eyes. Having experienced it firsthand, Mulumbi shared how dehumanizing it was to be looked by such eyes and just how naked and transparent they made him feel. Mulumbi then fell on one side and died. The news of the arrival of the strange ones spread like wildfire in the village, and soon all the villagers were talking about this occurrence. Caution was shared for all villagers to be aware of strange pink people with long hair. Fear covered the whole village and nearby villages, and women from then were escorted by warriors whenever they were near or went near the river or out at night. Lumbedu's youngest wife, Lulinda, however, continued a secret love affair with Shikongo, Mburu's son, and because of lust, these two met at night by the Zambezi River to entice their lustful passions. Though aware of the death sentence due such an act, these two continued their affair for about a month. The love-struck pair made their way to a hut in the village, which they mistakenly assumed was as empty as it was dark. They satisfied their lustful passions and then slept. The next morning, they woke up bound hand, foot, and surrounded by 6 pink men with long hair, who were dressed in full battle armor and who carried weapons. From their amused laughs, Lulinda picked up that these pink men laughed like humans like them, and not like evil spirits as they had assumed. By use of body language, gestures, counting fingers and toes, etc., the youngest of the pink men communicated what Lulinda understood to mean that they were about 300 pink men, including women and children, and that they had grown tired of eating meat but wanted other foodstuffs. Lulinda thus suggested that she may take these pink men to their chief Chungwe, but Chikongo reminded that they should not go together, as such may expose their secret and produce deadly consequence. So Lulinda and Chikongo led the pink man to Chungwe, and when close by, Chikongo kissed Lulinda and then disappeared into the forest. So Lulinda led them alone the rest of the way. Little did they know that devious Ojoyo, Lumbedu's first wife, who had trailed Lulinda, had seen them kiss. Ojoyo then shared the news that Lulinda was leading the strange ones into the village, and such news spread across the whole village. Tuwandi, Lumbedu's second wife, hid her child in a great corn bowl and began running to save her life. To her dismay, she ended up in the Dimo village of the cannibals, where she was chased and caught by cannibal women and cooked to death. Meanwhile, Lulinda led the pink man to Lumbedu's hut and found the hut deserted, and Lumbedu hiding in fear. He asked that Lulinda not tell that he's hiding, but disloyal Lulinda exposed him, and Lumbedu wet his loinskin in fear of the strange ones. At this time, an unarmed, odd-looking foreigner who was treated like a slave accompanied the strange ones, and was now given orders and even kicked on the buttocks. He then arose, opened the bag he carried, and laid open its contents. From the tools he took out from his bag, he began making drawings to tell the story of the pink men from when they left their land to their arrival to this land of the black man. His drawings included battles involving the pink man and another race, wars with various warriors, zebra-like animals without stripes which rode vehicles, some canoes with long poles, man-looking figures who fought in battle, and women and children-looking figures who were kept in safety. Also, that such occurrences lasted about 100 days. Lulinda screamed when the odd men arrived at the part where they met her with Chikongo. Such was how their secret affair was exposed, including their last kiss before Chikongo disappeared into the forest. Further, the odd men communicated in drawings that the pink men want to trade foodstuffs in exchange for weapons. They then helped themselves to Lumbedu's corn baskets and left weapons and tools in return. Amid the commotion of the exchanges, the odd man grabbed some of Lumbedu's tools for himself and finally escaped from being the slave of the pink man. Ojoyo and the rest of Lumbedu's family returned later, and Lumbedu was both struck by fear of what he had seen and fascination by the weapons he now acquired in exchange for his corn. Ojoyo shared what she saw Lulinda do with Chikongo in the forest, and because Lumbedu was unable to act, the women took matters into their own hands, and according to the village custom, they punished Lulinda, sent for the law-enforcing tribal avengers to arrest and bring Chikongo, and judgment was declared that same evening both Chikongo and Lulinda would be publicly executed according to the ways of the tribe. Chikongo was executed first, and like his father had told him, he died like a brave warrior and didn't cry like what Ojoyo had hoped to witness. His last breath was a curse that all who were executing him would soon also die. Lulinda was then placed on top of dead Chikongo and tied face to face with him on a raft, and judgment given was that their raft will be led into the crocodile-infested river and thus be left for the crocodiles to devour the pair. Indeed, Shikongo's blood attracted many crocodiles, and one had already grabbed Shikongo's foot and had moved the raft southward. Lulinda, with eyes closed, waited her death and was deeply surprised and grateful when she was rescued by a strong man from the grasp of hungry crocodiles. She noticed the man looked familiar and was indeed the odd man who had escaped from being a slave of the pink man. It is believed that this man took Lulinda further south and there founded the Varozwi tribe, and not much else is known about this man. Following his son Gumbu's advice, Lumbedu used the knowledge of the strange ones to gather to himself more weapons in exchange for corn, and with intent to use the weapons to overthrow all the kings in their village, and to emerge as the high chief in the village, especially because the weapons of the pink men was more deadly than those of the village warriors. The exchange of corn for weapons took place for 5 days on the Zambezi, and soon Lumbedu had enough weapons to arm about 200 men. Thus, by use of cutthroats, Lumbedu slew High Chief Chungwe at the doorstep of his own royal hut, and within a day became the new High Chief. The greedy, undisciplined, and self-seeking Lumbedu was highly intoxicated by the level of power he now had acquired, and he continued trading with the pink men for more deadly weapons. Lumbedu's son Gumbu also benefited from his father's doing, and soon villagers nearby and their chiefs were also killed or captured. Gumbu took a young lady by the name Temena from the Botswana people as another wife, after having conquered them in battle. At that time, the Botswana people were known as a peace-loving and blessed nation which seldom had wars. On their return, Gumbu was struck by a blinding disease, and Temena took that as opportunity to lead him to a cliff, where she pushed him and soon followed to ensure they both died. It is said the place where her blood was spilled grew a flower species which was called the Temena in her honor. At this time, the strange ones sat at a council meeting to discuss if their plan was working. It turned out that they had intended to overthrow the 100 villagers in the area, but had tricked greedy Lumbedu to doing all the dirty work for them by supplying him all the necessary weapons and pretending to be his friends and hoping that he would use the weapons to destroy his own people. And this he did. This plan worked very well, and after a year and 8 months of reigning as chief, the strange ones attacked. The attack arrived simultaneously with Lumbedu and Onjoyo's 25th anniversary celebrations, wherein they ate a whole raw flamingo, in keeping the eating of the flamingo custom. This custom was exclusive for those it honored. Thus only Lumbedu and Onjoyo were the ones with bellies filled with rich food and highly intoxicating drinks. The rest of the villagers were fully sober. A wounded messenger from another village, now subject to Chief Lumbedu, came to report how their village was completely destroyed by the strange ones and how they were on their way to Lumbedu's kraal. This wounded soldier died after delivering this message. The sober villagers all left, and only intoxicated Lumbedu and Onjoyo remained in the kraal. Onjoyo awoke in the morning and noticed they had been deserted, and after seeing a dead man and hearing sounds of oncoming soldiers, she tried to wake Lumbedu and ultimately left him as he was still heavily drunk. The strange ones arrived and found Lumbedu alone, still drunk. In his drunk state, and to their amazement, he danced drunk and then grabbed the sword of the younger strange one and killed himself. Meanwhile, Onjoyo had ran to the cave where she had kept Kademu, a young 18-year-old boy foreigner whom Lumbedu had captured after killing their people. She had kept this young man for her own lustful desires and had lied that she had killed him. Onjoyo had then assigned Zozo, a hunchback, to guard Kademu both day and night, and when enticed by her lustful desires, she would visit and spend time alone with Kademu, whom she addressed as my love. On this day, Ojoyo spent time with Kademo and told him that Lumbedu had died. To this, Kademo responded that Ojoyo is now his and that they must head to his people. After being led out of the cave, he no longer addressed Ojoyo as queen, but as you, and beat her and rode on her, called her a cow, and forced her to carry him to his village, where she would be cooked and eaten by his Demo cannibal people. This torture continued till near their village. Zozo then struck Kademu unconscious, and just as Ojoyo was busy showering Zozo with gratitude and praises for having saved her from the cannibals, Zozo started stabbing her as revenge for having killed Vunakwa, his sister, hiding her body in her hut and lying that she had fallen in the Zambezi River just so she would be the only one benefiting from Lumbedu's reign as High Chief. Thus Ojoyo died. Meanwhile, the strange ones helped themselves to all they wanted and took many villagers to be slaves and took them away by ship to their land far away across the seas. The slaves were tied together with chains and made to do intense labor, such as building great forts, digging metals such as iron ore, copper, and gold with their hands, and were heavily worked till they died. These slaves were forced to take precious metals from their land and hand it over to the strange ones, and the strange ones took them away by ships across to their faraway land. Also, animals such as elephants and hippos were butchered for their ivory tusks and bones and blubber. It is told that more strange ones and Arabai arrived, and some even mated with the locals and produced the yellow strange ones, and that some of the prominent women of the strange ones mated with animals such as the lion in an attempt to produce a fierce species. They, however, soon focused more attention on building their life of luxury.